Welcome to another episode. If you've been following any of the stuff that we've been doing recently, you probably know that Steve was doing all of this with me. But unfortunately, Steve's going to take a break from them, and it'll be me. Which means that I'm going to take a slight shift from what we were doing in terms of talking about marketing, the agency landscape, and AI within that. I'm going to focus a lot on the AI side, which is what I know most and what I research the most. So today, I wanted to touch on a few things that have been happening in the space that I think deserve some attention. The first one, and I have them written down over here, is AI quality. So you might have seen in the news or in general what different companies are publishing out there, which is that a lot of jobs are getting automated. Now, there is also a report that came out from MIT saying that 95% of generative AI projects are failing. So, how is it possible that you have the narrative of the larger company saying, well, we're capable of automating software engineering, we're capable of automating like full sales teams, we're capable of calling prospects, qualifying them with voice agents and so on, but at the same time all of those things are failing. So currently AI is in a state, like if you don't hype all of that and you don't go into massive valuations like the ones that OpenAI and so on, AI just works probably at about 80% of what you need to do. So if you take a task and you try to organize a workflow around that task, AI probably will be able to complete around 80% of it. This is the reason why when you go into things like Cursor or Lovable or Bolt, which I've used, you get mostly average sort of completions that you will get like a few years back, in terms of like you will go to a medium-sized agency if you were looking for some web design, and an average to lower tier agency will be able to deliver what Lovable, Bolt, and so on are capable of delivering in the front end, and then in the back end, similar thing with the likes of Cursor and so on. When you're trying to orchestrate for massive amount of users and so on, the knowledge required to orchestrate, design, architect all of that infrastructure, AI is not there yet. Not even tools like Claude Code or anything like that. Those tools are really powerful, they are capable of helping you a lot in your day-to-day, but the AI quality isn't there. So when I talk a lot to business owners and so on, and they tell me like, oh, we don't want to be left behind, we want to be able to keep up with the pace, and what are the things that we need to do? I always say that first of all, we need to make sure that we are working on the right processes. And I'll touch processes later on, because AI is not here to duct tape a process and fix it or anything like that. You need to think differently about it. But going back to the topic of quality, this is the reason why when I talk about AI, you should always talk about in terms of pairing it up with a human. So a lot of the narrative is around full automation or full agency for autonomous robots and so on. That shouldn't be the goal, because the technology isn't there. So LLMs are plateauing. You've seen that GPT-5 was in the news not because it was a really powerful model, but because people were unhappy with how it behaved. Some people said that in order to increase reliability, they needed to reduce the creativity that came with GPT-4. I agree. But at the same time, it shows the limitations of what these models are capable of with the architecture that they have, right? If you're looking to build artificial general intelligence or something that is way smarter than humans, then you shouldn't be able to, you shouldn't have to compromise on things like quality versus creativity. Like the creativity and the quality should come as part of that supernatural intelligence, right? If we are not capable of achieving that, it means that certainly we are not there, or perhaps that this isn't the path towards that super intelligence. Now, keeping on this path of super intelligence, there have been researchers from Meta, like Jan LeCun, which have said a couple of years, well, I'm not sure if it was a couple of years ago, but certainly more than 12 months ago, that LLMs were boring to him and that it wasn't the path to full intelligence or developing new intelligence. Generative AI or GenAI is a super pattern matching architecture. Even though we have chain of thought models, you can activate thinking in the models and so on. All we are doing is increasing the time that it takes to come to a resolution, because it's taking interim steps to try and approximate as much as possible the pattern that you're trying to achieve. So LLMs are not sentient or anything like that a super intelligence will give you. If they were sentient and they're hiding it from us, then probably I'm gonna be the first one going if they decide to be hostile. But so far it's not the case, so I don't think it will happen. So that's the reason why, if GPT-5 is plateauing and you need to compromise on quality versus creativity, that's the reason why applications that rely on LLMs need to be paired up with humans, because there's going to be an evaluation factor that the human needs to perform on any of the tasks. The best companies that are doing this, the companies that are not working on the hype, that are working on industries that are perhaps old, that they have taken some time to adopt some of the new technologies and so on, those are the ones that are prime time. And anybody that truly understands these things, those are the ones making money with AI, and those are the 5% that are absolutely killing it in terms of revenue with agentic systems, because they understand the capabilities of it. And that's why I always recommend to people, you shouldn't fall for the hype. You should think about the things that good businesses need to do. A good business owner needs to have a vision, needs to have a strategy, needs to know where it goes, needs to understand how it runs its operation, and then after that, it needs to perhaps think about how to embed AI into their processes. This is the topic about AI quality. Now, following from AI quality, the second thing that I wanted to talk about is supervision. So, following from the quality thing, we've seen that in the news, I can't remember if it was Cursor, but no, it was Replit. It was Replit, where they've deleted the database of $1 million company. So, as the system was working in fixing code, adding new features, etc., at some point the agent found a situation in which it decided that it should delete the database, and it completely left for a few days the whole company like blank. Now the engineers from Replit were able to recover that database later on, but the moment that these kind of news get into the public, the damage is already done, right? When you have situations like that, when you have situations in which people are struggling mentally and they go to LLMs to talk about their problems, the issues with the friends, with their partners, and all that type of stuff, and due to the recommendations that AI gives them, they might hurt themselves. You can tell that the technology isn't reliable. It's not something that you can leave out there fully autonomously doing things for you. There might be things, like for example, if you were offshoring documentation or paperwork, video editing, things like that, there might be situations where the quality of work was never part of your workflow for whatever reason, and you just need the capacity in whichever form to actually accomplish something. That's something that we are also seeing. We are seeing that people are using AI to cut offshoring, going overseas for certain things and so on. That's something that up until now it wasn't possible. The interim step was, I'm going to try and cut costs by going to countries like Vietnam or Philippines and so on, find VAs, video editors, some kind of digital marketing specialists and so on. And because the wages are so low, I can offset some of my costs, increase my profitability due to that. I personally think that the closer that you are to your customers, the better that you can serve them. And because AI is reducing so much the barrier to entry, like anybody can just go and build a prototype, anybody can go and do some sort of things that weren't capable before, because now you can just, in plain English, accomplish a lot of things. That's actually beneficial for those of us that actually want to take the hard route. So what do I mean by that? Agentic systems should rely on people because you want to maximize the quality that comes out of that system. Capacity for capacity's sake only creates another issue. It moves the bottleneck into another part of the system. So think of it like this from a business perspective. Say that you're a company, like an agency, and you currently have your capacity maximized. You're running at about 85%, which is with inefficiencies and so on. It means that you don't have any capacity to add any more work or add increased revenue without adding more people and so on. What that means is that if you implement AI in that system, if you implement AI to come and do something for your employees, therefore you increase your capacity, at some point what you are wanting is to have more customers, because it's the only way in which you can increase revenue. So what happens is people think like, oh, I need to be more efficient. I need to basically use AI to remove the things that don't add any value into my work and so on. Once that happens, if the company is not aligned, and like I said before, if there is no strategy, if there is no vision, now the bottleneck is your sales funnel. So how many people can you convert so your capacity that you've liberated to deliver more gets consumed again? If you think about it, this pattern has happened historically over the last 100 years, right? Ever since the Industrial Revolution, a new development or a new tool will come in, and there's been lag between adopting it in full, and obviously the early adopters and so on took advantage. We've seen the same with AI, right? But it came a point where it plateaued, and then another technological advancement came in, and we went through this cycle all over again. Like I said, I don't personally feel like AI is super intelligent, and it's a human if you want to deliver more quality. So what that means is that we've reached probably the apex of the early adopters. So if ChatGPT came 4 years ago, then currently we've seen all of the early adopters, we've seen all of the different applications that are possible with it. People are at this stage where some of them, and I had a very funny case today on LinkedIn, they just want to dump whatever it is that AI is giving them out there to maximize volume. I don't think that's how it should be. I think that you should be as thorough as you were before AI to actually build anything. Because if the barrier to entry gets lowered and a lot of people enter to play, what you get is a lot of noise. So if you're a user, if you don't have a clear path to buy or to join a tribe or a community or whatever, then all of these new players are adding noise to everything and chaos. And when you have too many options to choose from, probably you don't choose. That's something that happens in my family quite a lot. Like my wife gets lots of options, like she cannot choose, right? This is exactly the same thing. But people are taking the lazy path. They are like, well, I can maximize the content that I can produce. I'm just going to dump it out there. That's not how it should be. You should focus a lot on building even higher quality stuff, because hopefully that leads to better customers. And hopefully what that means is that you are one of the early adopters of this new wave. We've gone through the research phase. Now we're plateauing technologically. Like the LLMs are not growing as fast as they were predicted to grow, and intelligence is not growing at that pace. Therefore, now is the time to find all of the applications in which you can significantly impact your bottom line. That's the strategy that you should follow. If you want to pick up a one-liner from this, is that you should focus on increasing your revenue, full stop. If AI is the solution to it, fantastic. If the solution is something else, so be it. But you don't need to be fixated on AI just simply because AI is promising loads of things, right? Following from this, I have a community in school, which I'll put the link in the video below, where the goal of that community is just simply for people to join, people that have the same mindset as I have, that working with AI or working towards learning AI, or simply business-minded people that are trying to pick up what the technology is giving us and so on. I have that school community for all of us. The whole point is that we create good conversations, that people learn from each other. That's it. It's free. If you want to join, like I said, just click the link in the description. Now, the third thing that I wanted to talk about, talking about quality and the status of AI, is processes, okay? So what I've seen, and this is something that even before I started working in AI was happening to me. It's like people don't spend the time in the process. So a process might happen. You might be in a company and you might think like, we're doing this like in this way, right? So in my eyes, there's been also laziness in that front because there are business constraints. There's never enough time to fix a process. So if it's sloppy, if it's not perfect, if people are frustrated but can cope with it, then, well, we're not going to touch it. We'll fix it later on. What I've been asked a few times, or what I've seen, is people saying, well, can we not use AI to fix that process? The answer is yes, but the answer is also no. If you have a dysfunction in any of your businesses, processes, or whatever, if you put AI into it, you're going to multiply the output of that. It's as simple as it is. So garbage comes in, garbage gets multiplied by AI, right? So what I try to do with businesses, and I've done it with multiple of them, is I try to make them think, forget about AI, forget about how intelligent it is, forget about the capabilities of AI. If you were to design this process for maximum reliability and maximum capacity, what would you change? And normally what that means is that we sit down and we present the current process. And for this, you need the people actually carrying out the work. You don't want to be thinking about this if you are not... you don't want to be thinking about this if you are not part of the process. Like the people that need to be in that room, that need to be talking about the process itself, is the people that are carrying out the work. That's how you maximize the efficiency of these kind of workshops and all that type of stuff. So you sit down with them and you ask them exactly to say, what are the things that you do? You try to annotate them with timings. I know that people don't like those things because they think that they're going to get measured on it. But you need to understand, you need to get a good feel for how long it takes for that process to finish and for the next person or customer to receive the output of it and receive the value of that process, okay? Now that that's done, if you don't know enough about AI, you might enter what is happening to me. People are asking me, well, Said, I don't know enough about the capabilities of AI, so if I try to put together a new process for this using AI, I really don't know how to do it. What I tend to think, and what I try to explain if you are not well versed in the capabilities of AI, is think about everything that requires writing, documentation, collecting, gathering, all those type of things. Anything that is written, anything that it has words, that's prime time for AI. So examples of this. Say that you have a database of cases, contracts, anything with information like prototypes, failed experiments, anything, right? Anything that it was written, documented, etc. If you want to maximize your chances of learning from it, for example, what you can do is you can create a RAG, which is a retrieval augmented generation system, in which what happens is, everything is about context, okay? So think about it from a context point of view. What happens is, You create a pipeline in which a user might interact with some form of AI, and that initial interaction will dictate what needs to be retrieved from a database. So, for example, imagine if you had the capability of saying, can you pull out the records of this patient in a medical field, for example, for the last 5 years? Right now, a doctor needs to click on a database, needs to type the user's name, needs to read all of that, and so on, right? I was actually in the hospital yesterday for a different reason, and I saw that they were typing loads and loads and loads of things, which was consuming a lot of time of the doctor because they needed to put it over there. Now, if instead of that, and this is a very simple example, the doctor was able to speak as I'm speaking to the camera right now and say, this patient had a cut over here, we investigated it, we checked the signals, the vitals, we checked that the area wasn't bruised and so on. So what I've decided to do is I've applied some stitches, and the protocol that I expect the user to have is XYZ. That can go into the database without them not having to click anything. You just record that, you get a transcript. That transcript gets sanitized by an AI to make sure that it's telling the story precisely, that there are no missing fields from a criteria and so on. And then it can go back to the doctor and say, hey, I've written this for you as you were talking. Do you want to actually put it in the database? Yes. Now, the other way, imagine that I'm going in, they're doing all of the checkups, and the doctor, instead of having to type, oh, I want you to bring all of the history of this patient, they essentially will get like a summary of everything that happened, everything that they need to be aware of, and so on, in clear bullet points. Simple example. Perhaps that's something that the NHS is already working on, or it has, and this is not something valuable to them. But this is how you think about things. Like you have a contract, and you might say, oh, well, like, what are the things that are in these contracts common? Like, AI can go and analyze all of that for you. Or leads, for example. If you wanted to analyze all of the leads, especially the ones that are failing or the ones that are getting through the door, what are the things that they have in common from the interactions and the touch points that we're having with these people? All of that can be put into a database. The LLM can retrieve it. It can put that context, extract it as a summary, and all of a sudden you have somebody that is collecting information for you, and it's bringing all of that to you presented in a manner that you can digest. Another thing, say that you work in digital and you're creating content, and I hate when people use AI with no thinking behind it to write content, because it's not natural. You can smell it from miles away. Say that, for example, me, I have 200 LinkedIn posts that I've written myself, in my tone, in my style, with my typos from English being my second language and so on. I can use all of those to then create a database in which the LLM can understand how I write. And I can even go a step further, and I can choose a model, and I can fine-tune that model with my content, meaning that it will be my personalized model to help me write. Now, the easy thing in there will be to think, well, now that the LLM knows exactly how I write, what I can do is I'm going to ask it to write this content for me, and I don't need to do anything. That's not the case. That's not how I will use it. I don't have a system like that, because I still enjoy writing most of the stuff myself, and then making sure that I don't lose the agility, the mental agility, and the creativity that I have. Because what happens as well is that the more AI you use, the more skills you're gonna lose in the long end. Use it or lose it, as they say. So what I was saying, I can create that LLM, and I can ask it, I've seen this as a prompt, okay? I've seen this news. I'm struggling to start the conversation and break the ice with a nice hook. Can you suggest some hooks based on the knowledge that you have to allow me to craft the best possible content and the best possible hook? That's how I will treat AI. And that's how I treat AI, essentially. When I work in complex workflows, for example, we are working on a very powerful pay-per-click system in which we're going to retrieve information from the paid accounts. We're going to look at the ads, the ones that are performing the best. We're going to be able to extract all of the A/B testing data and send A/B testing data through AI. So when I look at all of those things, what I do is I break everything into the simplest and smallest process that I can. And if I don't need to use AI, I won't use it because it's non-deterministic, meaning that every single time that I put a simple dot of AI in a process, it means that the evaluation and qualification that I need to do afterwards, when it's in production and running with client accounts and so on, is super high, meaning that maintenance and evaluation are probably the most important thing when working with AI. So these are my 2 cents for you to think about processes and how to design processes for AI. You map the current process, the one that is dysfunctioning, the one that is not doing well. Then if you are not very experienced with AI and the capabilities, focus on the things that rely a lot on documentation, that rely a lot on words and so on, and think about how you can add context to a system so a human can use it better for you. Now, the last thing that I want to talk about is I'm going to change this really quickly, and I'm going to put this video that Harvard School Review has kindly put together, and I want us to listen to it. But first, I'm going to check the audio.
You need to be bored.
Yeah.
You will have less meaning, and you will be more depressed if you never are bored. I mean, it couldn't be clearer. Let me give you the good side of boredom in general. Boredom is a tendency for us to not be occupied otherwise cognitively, which switches over our thinking system to use a part of our brain that's called the default mode network. That sounds fancy. It's really not. The default mode network is a bunch of structures in your brain that switch on when you don't have anything else to think about.
So the reason why I wanted to show this video is because AI, like I said before, use it or lose it, right? The more AI that we use, and we've seen this with algorithms, I feel like the more in trouble we're going to get if it ever happens something and AI is removed from our powers, right? So if we over rely on AI, then our cognitive capacity is going to decline, because most people are using AI for intellectual skills, right? I'm trying to, especially for those that are not putting any effort into it, or I'm just going to completely delegate my writing into AI, or I'm completely going to delegate the image generation and creativity to AI, or I'm completely going to delegate this into AI, whatever that is, right? Software, for example. Happens to me, the more I use AI to help me write code and so on, the more I see myself lagging or slowing down when I need to do something by myself, because I over rely in certain areas of it for my own writing. Okay. Now, why do I say this? I do believe that perhaps the people in the 30s, 40s, 50s, well, we just need to make sure that we keep our mental agility, okay? But what about the kids? So AI is coming to disrupt learning and education. I do believe, and this brings me back to the days where I was a child and my grandfather was really tough on me, like really, really tough. But it was the kind of tough love that made me the kind of man that I am today, right? That hardship, the struggle that I went through as a kid, like the fact that I had to do my homework straight away after coming back home, no playing, no toys, nothing, homework first. The fact that I had to read after that and I couldn't play. The fact that video games were only allowed on the weekends when I was a bit older and so on. All of those things forced me to be bored. And I think I developed a lot of my critical thinking when I was bored. And this is what this video is showing over here. I'll put the link to it in the description below as well, because I think this is fabulous, especially if you're a father or a parent, sorry, and you're trying to think about, well, what's the next generation of intelligence? How are my kids going to survive the AI world and so on? I do believe that regardless of what happens with AI and super intelligence, we need to be able to take our own decisions. I have seen firsthand how I've heard that certain people, if AI says do this, they wouldn't even criticize it. They will be like, oh, this is what we need to do because AI is right. I know for a fact that AI is not right 100% of the time. So relying on it to then make decisions about your own life, I personally feel like is suicidal. I don't think that should happen. So kids or children that are getting access to these tools, perhaps through school, perhaps through parent accounts and so on, to do their homework or to basically alleviate their pain. I'm gonna call pain like this because I'm just thinking about homework, studies, and that type of stuff. Nothing in terms of mental health. That's a different topic. Should be really constrained. And the other thing is, like, I've done it myself when I commute to work. Now, instead of going into social media, because I deleted all of my social media mostly other than LinkedIn, I tend to brainstorm with AI because I think I'm being productive. I'm not sure if that's true based on what this is saying over here, right? It's something that I need to explore. But if I didn't have the critical thinking to think for myself, regardless of what anybody will tell me, then I wouldn't be able to analyze this situation and say, am I actually getting a benefit from brainstorming in the train? Do I need to switch off at times? Am I working too much? Am I, when I'm watching television or when I'm doing something that essentially it's just for a cognitive deload, like playing video games or anything like that, am I escaping something that it should happen to me? Should I go back into the traditional like boredom that I had as a child? I am asking over here to think about this critically and allow yourselves some space to evaluate if what you're currently doing actually is working for you in the long run. And with this, I've covered all of the topics that I wanted to talk today. If you've managed to get all the way till here, I appreciate you. I hope that you enjoy talking and listening to me about AI, and I'll see you in the next one.